Davante Adams and the Las Vegas Raiders. And reports are Davante Adams is, quote, not seeing eye to eye with the Raiders on having Jimmy Garoppolo as their quarterback and just overall their offseason moves. And before we get into his actual comments and kind of how I've deciphered them, had a little fun here, a little Davante Adams translator, if you will. Let's take a look at some of the offseason moves, the real ones that jump out. So we know Jimmy G signed 3 years, $73 million contract in free agency. Josh Jacobs was franchise tag. They signed Jacoby Myers on a 3-year deal, $11 million a year, $33 million for 3 years. Not amazing, not bad. We know Jacoby Myers hasn't been much of anything in the league. They drafted Tyree Wilson 7th overall. They drafted the Darren Waller replacement and Michael Mayer 35th overall. Some say he was the best tight end in the league. We know Derek Carr was released, signed by my New Orleans Saints. We know Jarrett Stidham was released, signed by the former New Orleans Saints head coach, and now at the Denver Broncos, of course, with Jarrett Stidham. We know Darren Waller was traded away. Matt Collins was signed by the Falcons, and defensive end Cleveland Farrell was signed by the Niners as well. The ones that I know were bothering Davante is Derek Carr, Darren Waller, more than likely the replacement with Jimmy G, and maybe even the signing of Jacoby Myers as well. Don't know if he's really going to be caught up on Tyree Wilson going 7th overall. I wasn't a fan, thought it was a major reach, would have loved to see Jalen Carter, but nonetheless, those are some offseason moves that we can keep in mind as we get through this topic here. So Davante Adams, couple quotes that he said, and really how I have deciphered them, and really what this means for the Las Vegas Raiders with now their best player on their team having this concern. So he says the front office thinks this is the best bet for us right now to put us in a position to be urgent. To me, that means I don't think this is the best position for us to win a Super Bowl. He didn't say the part there of I don't think this is the best position for us to win a Super Bowl. Davante said the front office thinks this is the best bet for us right now to put us in a position to be urgent. AJL thinks that means I don't think this is the best position for us to win a Super Bowl. Davante then turns around and says, we don't see eye to eye on what we think is best for us right now. I'm going to have to buy into this and try to be as optimistic as possible. AJL's meaning we aren't on the same page of what will help us win a Super Bowl, and I'm not feeling positive on what has happened this offseason. That's essentially what Davante Adams is saying. But of course, he's got to keep it clean in front of the media, franchise's best player, we know. So Davante turns back around and says, it's not what I expected to happen, but it's something that's the reality now. It all depends on the style of ball that we play. If we play a certain brand of ball, I can get Jimmy G to conform to whatever. But if we use him a certain type of way, then it's going to make it tough for us to maximize who we should be this year. To me, to AJL, that means I'm not happy about Derek Carr and Darren Waller leaving, but it is what it is. If Jimmy can carry us and ball out, we will win. If we cater to Jimmy's weaknesses, we might fail. He comes back around for the last comment here and says, my goal is to win a Super Bowl with this team, and that's why I didn't come here to just be cute with Derek, talking about his former teammate Derek Carr that just went to the Saints. It is to really try and have a shot at changing this organization. Again, AJL meaning I'm committed to Vegas, and while I'm not happy with Derek leaving, it is what it is. So a franchise's best player is now on record saying they're unhappy, and this usually doesn't bode well. We know that Davante isn't in the position of quarterback, so we know his concerns are heard, and he even said, I know the Raiders front office, I know Josh McDaniels, I know the owners hear my concerns. As, you know, again, now looking in on it, Davante didn't say this, but fans looking in, Davante is the Raiders' best player. He got the respect for Josh Jacobs. I love Darren Waller while he was there, had the pleasure of meeting him, and now they're both gone, and it's just, you know, it's just Davante Adams, who just came off of a record year with his former teammate in Derek Carr. So I know Davante Adams is good and pissed off now with the Raiders after kind of being uncomfortable when he wanted to go to the Raiders while he was with the Packers because he wanted to go play with Derek Carr because they both went to Fresno State. So now you have your best player on record saying, I don't think this is the best position for us to win a Super Bowl. We aren't on the same page of what's going to help us win a Super Bowl. And I don't feel good about what's happened this offseason. I'm not happy about Derek Carr and Darren Waller leaving, but it is what it is. If Jimmy can carry us and ball out, we will win. But if we cater to Jimmy's weaknesses, we might fail. I'm committed to Vegas, and while I'm not happy with Derek leaving, it is what it is. That is essentially what, Davante Adams has said in this press conference, or not in this press conference, but in this, you know, in these statements that have gotten out. We saw when Jimmy G got signed, he said, if you haven't said shit to me for the last 3 weeks, don't talk to me. Then he comes out, says the Raiders GM is the man. So again, we know Davante's emotions are creeping through, and I think this is a start of the precedent of the Raiders going into the tank for the 2023 season. And here's why. Again, he does not like the Jimmy G signing, and he didn't see it coming, essentially. He doesn't believe the team is going to be set up for success with what's going on, and rightfully so. He's a bad head coach. As of right now, it's a bad defense and has been for the last decade. Derek Carr never had a top 20 defense in his career as a Las Vegas Raider. There's a bad front office, and there's a noisy franchise recently between the Henry Ruggs incident, between the Damon Arnett incident, between John Gruden resigning and suing the league, between the Raiders trying to be the Patriots and bringing in Josh McDaniel, and apparently Brian Hoyer's on the team behind Jimmy Garoppolo. It's a lot going on, and it's been a lot of noise. And again, I'll continue relate it back to the Denver Broncos. Everybody thought the Broncos were going to be great last year. I said, rookie head coach, brand new quarterback, brand new owner, and they went 5-12. Now, there were a lot of factors in that, but I wasn't shocked when the Broncos were not good. And if the Raiders are only going to win 5 to maybe 8 games this year, haven't looked deep at the schedule yet, so don't call me on that comment. I'm going to get into those predictions as the shows roll on and the season comes up. It's not going to be shocking if the Raiders do not win a lot of games, and they will be going into the tank potentially. Really, what I'm seeing now with the Raiders is I just think they're on track after this offseason to be one of the worst teams in the NFL. And here's why. Jimmy G was catered to in San Francisco with an elite defense, running games every single year. Josh Jacobs is very good, and the O-line was good last year with the Raiders, so there is that. But the defense is not there. It's never been there. It's not in the culture. It showed with the number 7 overall Tyree Wilson pick, who feels like he's a one-trick pony, slow one-step guy. And Derek Carr had to carry the Raiders all the damn time. Jimmy G hasn't had to do that. Jimmy G's had the comfortability of a George Kittle, which kind of has Michael Mayer now. We'll have to wait and see what he turns into. He's had the comfortability of a run game, which he does have that in the running back room with Josh Jacobs, and a good O-line there, like I just mentioned with the Raiders too. But is not good. He could be in games where he's trying to will them into comebacks. He's trying to win shootouts, which you can reference the no, never mind. That was the Chiefs Rams. You know, we know when the Niners and the Saints had that big game in the regular season. It was a high scoring game. We've seen the Niners be in some high scoring games, right, with Jimmy G, but it hasn't been on Jimmy G's arm to overcome a bad defense and bad coaching and win. And I don't believe Jimmy's going to be able to do that. Josh Jacobs and Davante Adams are great. Not taking anything away from that. And Jimmy G finally, ironically, will have his first true wide receiver one. I know about Deebo Samuel, George Kittle, Brandon Ayuk, Emmanuel Sanders. All those guys are amazing, if not elite in some cases, right? You probably say that about Deebo and Kittle. But they never really got used as that prime wide receiver one target for Jimmy G. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's okay. But that was the whole spreading the ball around mantra, which is part of that San Francisco offense, which is not going to be the same in Las Vegas. So if Jimmy G is catered to, Davante will be underused, and then Michael Mayer, the tight end, will more than likely be that security blanket. That's just how I see everything playing out. So again, Davante Adams, pissed, unhappy, doesn't like the offseason moves. I didn't think the Raiders were going to be a good team. I believe they're going to be one of those teams that's going into the tank. Not as bad as the Cardinals, but maybe just a few games off from necessarily being that bad. And you'll probably think I'm being harsh. You probably think I am dragging the Raiders right now. And I kind of am. But I don't see how a quarterback who was catered in a system with San Francisco, elite defense, elite O-line, elite running game, damn near elite coaching. We know what he's done in the playoffs, obviously, in the Super Bowl. Speaking of Kyle Shanahan, to good O-line, still an elite running back. I don't know if I would call Jacobs elite. I know he just led the league in rushing yards, but I don't necessarily like when he's inside the red zone. I think he could be a little more versatile, but he's great, no doubt, right? Michael Mayer, who some said was the best tight end in the league, in the draft, excuse me. And then you have Davante Adams. But Jimmy G doesn't have that huge cannon, that major arm, I feel like, to take full advantage of a Davante Adams, a guy that's really going to be routing folks up. And it's not that Deebo or George Kittle or Ayuk or Emmanuel Sanders didn't do that, but they're not on the talent of Davante Adams. And I'm not saying a higher caliber receiver of talent is going to make Jimmy G not be able to rise to the occasion, but it's the defense that worries me. It's the different scheme, and it's the head coaching. But Raiders fans, Please sound off. Joe Morley, hope you see this video, man. You are honestly the biggest Raiders fan I know. Raiders fans, sound off in the chat, in the comments. Let me know what you think about the Raiders' kind of outlook for next year. Davante Adams comments being very bold, being very, very upfront about how he feels, and just really where you think this team is going to head now that these comments are out, but also seeing how the offseason is playing out as well. Are you confident in what's going to be happening with these Las Vegas Raiders?